favorite spirit to +3, raising its overall stats. And for the last extra credit task, you'll need to head over to this half-circle structure northeast of the Stormhill Shack. Near the big doorway, you'll be invaded by an NPC, but quickly grab the items that are laying there. Those let you invade other players' games and do some PvP, you jerk. If you then manage to take down that invader, you'll get a few extra goodies as well. And after that 20 or so minutes, if you follow this exact route, your character is so overpowered, Elden Ring just went from soul-crushing to slightly less soul-crushing. This has been Alex, thanks for watching, and good luck.
Or areas that will humble you. In these moments, it's important to remember that these obstacles are often there by design. They do not block the path, they are the path. Through skill or creativity, or just by coming back later, you can overcome any obstacle in this game, and this video will give you all the tools you need to do so. Before you do anything else, you should try to master the basics of combat. At the core of combat is your stamina bar. This when you perform the actions necessary for fighting, for example sprinting, dodging, blocking attacks, attacking, all of these things and more require stamina. Next, let's talk about the proper flow of combat. While locked on with R3, keep your shield raised with L1. This will prevent damage from any attacks that are too fast for you to react to. As you block them, your stamina bar will be depleted, so make sure to drop your shield in between attacks in order to regain that stamina faster. Now, blocking fast attacks often doesn't deplete too much of your stamina, but blocking slow attacks is often a different story, and a lot of them can easily break your guard, leaving you wide open. Thus, if you think you can anticipate a slow attack or a series of attacks, it's often better to roll through them instead. Rolls have invincibility frames that nullify all damage if you press the roll button around the instant where you would have been hit. And while this is more difficult to do than blocking, avoiding damage in this way is way more stamina efficient than just blocking. Oh, and make sure that you stay below 70% equipment load as well, so that your rolls stay fast and effective. As you fight an enemy, pay special attention to their animations and try to memorize their moveset. Over time, you will learn the best way to avoid certain attacks and where they're located. So learn to fight with a mixture of both blocks and rolls. As a general rule, you should block fast attacks and roll through slow attacks. By fighting efficiently in this way, you'll avoid damage and still have stamina left over to deal damage while the boss or enemy is left open. A new way to deal damage in Elden Ring is with guard counters, which are a core part of Elden combat and essentially allow you to weaponize your own defense. So shortly after successfully blocking an attack, you can retaliate by tapping R2 and performing a guard counter attack. These counters are extremely powerful. If you recognize an opportunity to safely perform one, you should. They deal great damage, and many lesser enemies will immediately have their super armor built But what is super armor? Well, it's an invisible meter that enemies and bosses have. It depletes when they take damage. When you fully deplete this meter, their super armor, you can critical attack. As a rule of thumb, any R2 attack will do more super armor damage. Jumping R2 attacks do a lot, running R2 attacks are great too, but fully charged R2 attacks seem to do the most. Also worth noting that this super armor regenerates over time, therefore it's important that you continually deal with it. If you sense the boss is close to breaking point, go on the defensive with your R2 attacks, try to do a lot of super armor damage over time. Often will be avoided. If you're just looking to do consistent damage,
that's not my one. No!
Generally,
Oh, I don't want to die tonight.
they're not as resistant to the fall. If you
Alright.
really want to prioritize damage over defense, then you can two-hand your weapon. The input for this is to hold triangle or Y and tap R1 or L1 to two-hand your right-hand item or left-hand item, respectively. In addition to granting you a new moveset, you will have more strength, more damage, more super armor damage, and you can often avoid recoil when striking an enemy's shield. So if your shield isn't helping when shooting counter, consider two-handing for damage instead. Now while you two-hand, you'll mostly be dodging for defense in this state. That said, it's worth noting that you can still two-handing. And you'll take some chip damage because the weapon isn't as good as a shield as for blocking. It's still a good idea to block in many situations, or at least keep your card up, especially if you want to use it.
Okay. I'm kidding.
Which can be achieved by equipping two weapons of the same class, one in each hand. With this, you'll get access to a special L1 attack that utilizes both weapons. Just like your R1 attacks, your L1 attacks do a combo of strikes, and can be utilized in jumping attacks as well. Speaking of jumping attacks, they're incredibly close, allowing you to cover distance and kill an attack simultaneously. If an enemy is open but you're kind of far away, just close the distance with a jumping attack and see how effective they can be. Jumping on one attack is generally better
Annoying.
for mounted enemies, and jumping on two attacks are generally better if you want to inflict damage and posture damage on ground enemies. Damage heals with your flask of crimson, which will always replenish when you walk or sit at a grace checkpoint. Additionally, you can get extra flask charges by clearing out the green blocks, or by defeating these small red creatures. At grace checkpoints, you can upgrade your flask with golden seeds and sacred tears. Golden seeds are found in minor trees and increase the amount of damage.
Oh shit.
Sacred tears are found in churches and increase the amount healed by the flask. Furthermore, you can balance the allotment of crimson flasks versus storing flasks at a point of rest. That is to quickly access the crimson healing flask at a time. Consider making it the first time for quick select. This way, push down the D-pad will always shortcut. At the top of the D-pad, you'll be able to cycle through your character selection of spells. New spells can be memorized by Sons of Grace. These spells will probably be incantations, which must be cast with a quick seal, or sorceries, which must be cast with a staff. Cycle through your equipped armaments by pressing left or right on the D-pad. If you die, then you'll drop all of your runes at your point of death. If you don't pick them up during your next life, then they'll be gone forever. Make sure to seek them out using your compass whenever you can, or invest them in items for your own character. When you do die, you can choose to resurrect at a site of grace, or sometimes at a stake of Marika. If you see this statue, or this icon, then it's probably an indication that you're in a difficult area, or near a boss, as a stake of Marika is nearby. Respawning at a stake of Marika will usually make your run back to your runes less severe, so it's often best to choose that option, unless you'd prefer to move on. If you're out in the open world, one way to overcome difficulty is by choosing the right scenarios to fight on your mount. Against large or mounted enemies that struggle against hit and run tactics, the mount is definitely the way to go. While mounted, R1 and R2 heavy attacks on the right side, L1 and L2 give light and heavy attacks on the left side. If you hold your heavy attack input, then you can charge them up, dealing continuous damage while you charge, which culminates in a strong attack at the end. While mounted, you automatically wield the armament in your right hand. If you would prefer to wield the armament in your left hand, use a two-handing input, so hold triangle or Y, and then tap L1 or R1. Your mount can take damage separately from you, but his damage can be healed by your Crimson Flasks, as well as by craftable roller raisins. As you get hit on your mount, you run the risk of losing your own super armor and getting knocked down for an extended period of time. If this happens, you are extremely vulnerable. If you're taking damage, then at a certain point, no matter what you're fighting, it's probably wise to dismount and fight them on foot for a little while. Jumping attacks off your horse are a great way to transition into melee combat. Dismount with L3 and slam them with L1, R1, or R2. The distance you cover with this is absurd, and initiating a fight in this way gives you an immediate advantage. As the fight goes on, consider if mounting up again for a burst of speed would be to your benefit. I guess this flying dragon, for example, certain attacks are better off being outpaced on mount. For a reliable way to mount up quickly, I would recommend binding your spectral steed whistle to your pouch, a secondary D-pad menu that can be edited in the menu. You can quickly access all four of these buttons by holding them and then tapping the appropriate button. You'll have access to mounting up instead of toggling rapidly through your items looking for your whistle. This same logic applies to any of items, quick, reliable access.
Shit!
Like
Shit! Stop doing that!
Poison tools. In addition to your double jump to extra height, you also have spirit springs, which take you to incredible heights. Conversely, you can safely jump into a spirit spring to negate all fall damage. While on your mount, L3 dismounts you, but when on foot, L3 can be used for stealth. In this crouched state, enemy aggro range is reduced, and you'll have an easier time getting around. Enemy aggro range is also reduced at night, so consider passing time at a site of grace to better suit your needs. At night, however, you might also find different enemies spawning in the world, so be aware of that. Another thing to get ahead of is crafting, which you can do as soon as you find the crafting kit from the church. After this, the crafting tab in the menu screen will use. After a few hours of play, you should have accumulated a few recipe books to expand your crafting options, and if you've been hunting and foraging between monsters, then you'll be able to make new upgrades. Pay attention to what material drops you're finding. It'll make it that tiny bit easier to get more of it. The crafting page gives you hints of where to find specific materials, and most world materials respawn instantly while resting at grace, making them invisible.
You're a buttface.
And while you're in Calais, gravitate to see the caves, where you find others, fellow merchants, on the beach, southwest of the Church of Calais, bringing clothes. Ranged weapons are excellent utility tools, allowing you to lure, poison, or sleep enemies from afar. There are two types of bow weapons, bows and crossbows, which use arrows or bolts, respectively. Enter precision aiming mode with L1 while two-handing the bow, and press R1 to fire the projectile in the first slot, and L2 to fire the projectile in the second slot. So, being creative with craftable items, or using utility items like bows, that's a great way to remember it. But sometimes you might just feel like your damage is too low. In that situation, you'll have to reinforce your weapon, which can be done at the Church of Ella at the smithing table. Here, you'll be able to get most armaments to +3 with smithing stone shards that are found throughout the world. That said, special armaments require other special shards, and to go beyond +3, you'll need to find an actual blacksmith. Alternatively, if you aren't happy with your shield, take a look at its stats. The most reliable shields are those that block 100% physical damage, but you can consider switching shields to suit specific encounters. The other stat you want to look at is guard boost. Higher guard boost means you take less of a stamina hit when you block. Upgrading an armament is a bit of a commitment. You can always find more stone shards in caves and around the world, but these are fairly rare, so make sure you really enjoy swinging a weapon before you upgrade it. A weapon also has to suit your build. What stats you decide to level at a great best for runes. When you start a game, you'll have to choose a starting character. Some use magic, some have ranged weapons, and some excel in melee. But it's important to remember that your starting class does not dictate your build. You do. While each character's starting stats give them different strengths and weaknesses, you are free to build your character in any direction from this point. If you haven't settled on a build yet, then you can't go too wrong by just leveling vigor for HP and resistance, endurance for stamina, improvement for line to increase your focus points.
But get out of here.
Your character archetype. Strength, for example, mostly affects your ability to wield heavy armaments, as well as your defense. Strength weapons are often slow, so being a lot more tanky will come in handy. Another stat to look out for is ways as you put on heavier armor, and having high poise will often prevent you getting interrupted mid-attack, which is really good for slow weapons. Dexterity is the counterpart to strength, and it raises your ability to wield a lot of lighter armaments, boosting their
That's really hurt. What happened?
Intelligence, faith. Intelligence generally boosts the damage of sorceries, while faith generally boosts the damage of patience. And it governs your discovery set, which increases enemy item prop rates. It's also a stat that increases the damage of certain sorceries and incantations, and can play into the stat scaling of some Every weapon comes with a default scale, and your favorite weapons will really
Oh, okay.
However, one thing you can do is apply compassion to it, which allows you to
Just like fucking Bloodborne, you sketch the flip werewolf.
beneficial scaling options. The scaling option patches of wood and skills. L2 will unleash you can always see which skill you will perform with L2 here. To apply an action, be sure to always
God, help.
in a
That's
slot.
fine, we get here. Oh, whoa.
Your options. Often, these skills will default to your shield. These attacks are very require small to use here, this blue bar. This is a really valuable resource, especially for magic builds which also rely on it to cast spells. That said, all builds can and should find a use for FP, and if you're having trouble in Elden Ring, you should always be thinking of an effective way to make use of this resource. Another powerful way to make use of FP is by summoning spirits. Once you acquire the summoning map early in the game, you'll be able to equip spirits on your quick select bar and summon difficult encounters. As long as you have enough FP, and as long as this rebirth monument symbol marks the encounter as difficult, then your spirits will fight alongside you until death. Some are ranged attackers, some are tanky, and some are a combination of both. Decide what works best for your build and what works best for the encounter as well. Only one type of spirit can be summoned at a time, and spirits cannot be summoned during multiplayer. Speaking of multiplayer, if you're having trouble, be on the lookout for pearl-calling finger remedies, which you can find throughout the world. Once consumed, these allow you to see other players' summon signs and summon help for major encounters. That said, you'll always be able to see NPC summon signs, so feel free to make good use of them. Alternatively, other players' signs can be accessed in summoning pools located at summoning effigies that are placed in key areas. If you want to learn more about engaging in multiplayer, read the items in your multiplayer tab in the menu screen. In general, if there's a tip that you want to read again that popped up, you can find all of those in your inventory menu all the way at the end.
Definitely need it.
Last but not least is your map. Revealing the map for an area will make it way easier to progress through the game. Map fragments can be collected at these glowing guide stems. If you're having trouble finding one in an unfamiliar area, try to stick to the main path, or failing that, try to look for this shape on your undiscovered map. With the map open, you can mark points of interest with markers or beacons that show up in the overworld. You can also fast travel between sites of Lost Grace or get a clearer idea of the direction that the main story requires. Rays of light will guide you on that path and often lead you towards your next logical checkpoint. Of course, it's up to you if you want to trust the guidance of Grace. If you're having trouble with the main path, just go in the opposite direction. Explore, get stronger, learn how to master your build. The guidance of Grace can often be spurned to great effect. Thank you for listening.
Is it back yet?
Oh yeah, it's back. Try stuffed quesadilla jumbo shrimp tacos only at Del Taco.
video features basically all of the lore discovered in the network test version of the game, and it's split into two parts. Part 1 talks about everything to do with the Erd Tree and the Golden Order. Part 2 begins here. It talks about everything to do with the stars and glintstone sorcery. These used to be 2 videos, and I meant to release them a month ago, so I'm sorry for that. Next week, we'll all be playing Elden Ring, but until then, I still think this video will serve as a good foundation for the goal that you're going to discover as you play. Can't wait to discover more. Without further ado, let's begin. One of the very first pieces of lore that you're confronted with is the fact that you're maidenless and fully divorced from the strength of runes. Now, runes are your currency. They're tiny fragments of the shattered Elden Ring, and to make use of them, most enlightened Tarnished require the help of someone called a Finger Maiden. These maidens serve a faction called the Two Fingers. Incantations from this faction rely on faith, and are for the most part benevolent healing spells, things like heal, or urgent heal, or cure poison. They all read, "The maidens serve the Two Fingers by guiding the Tarnished to grace, in accordance with its mighty will." Now, remember, Tarnished were once spurned by the grace of gold and the greater will. They were rejected. And unsurprisingly, rejection is also a spell of the Two Fingers. And I feel like, as Tarnished, we're going to have to decide whether we really want to serve this greater will, even after it rejected us for so long. This greater will requires nothing less than total obedience, and the rejection miracle reads, "Hark, Tarnished. If you truly walk in faith, you must be prepared to reject all else." So, with all of this, you'd think then that Melina, our maiden, is a maiden of the Two Fingers then, right? But she's not.
There is something for which I must apologize. I've acted the Finger Maiden, yet can offer no guidance. I am no maiden. My purpose was long ago lost.
So in a way, we are still maidens. Melina is just playing the role. All she asks in return is that we take her with us to the foot of the Erd Tree. She's searching for her purpose.
Given to me by my mother inside the Erd Tree, long ago, for the reason that I yet live, burned and bodiless.
We can't yet say who her mother was, or why she was inside the Erd Tree, but I think we can guess how she's been burned, and a marking around her closed eye. This symbol is a marking with 3 digits, and it looks quite similar to the Flame of Frenzy incantation, which reads, "An incantation from the maddening 3 fingers causes the yellow flame of frenzy to burst forth from the caster's eyes. This incantation can drive human foes mad. Those whose eyes are afflicted with the flame of frenzy are..."
Michael's lowest prices of the season sale is back. Get 60% off select games and frames, and for free.
Greetings, Guardians. My name is Byfear. What you're about to watch is the culmination of 5 years of studying the law.
Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following all the news and rumors on the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. I'm Devin Hatfield, and as always, I am joined by Ryan McCaffrey, host of IGN's Xbox Podcast Unlocked.
Welcome back, Damon.
Thank you, good to be back. And Jonathan Norbush, host of IGN's PlayStation Podcast Beyond.
Beyond. Hey, Devin. Good to see you.
And this week we're focusing on upcoming next-gen sci-fi RPGs, of which there are several very exciting games on the horizon. So let's just get right into it. Let's start actually with the one that is the only one on this list that actually has a release date. Hopefully we'll make it out by the end of this year. That is Starfield. Long time in development, but now has a release date of November 11th, 2022. Ryan, this is a big Xbox exclusive. First new IP from
Where is the
Bethesda in
fucking
quite a long time.
things?
And they've been sort of like rolling out
great,
sort of like dev diary videos and concept art pretty regularly. How is Starfield shaping up for you these days?
Well, there's still a lot of mystery behind it. And number one, I do want to go on record. I've said this to Todd Howard directly. I'm not sure I believe him when he says November 11th, only because they announced that last year. And it's like we've seen so many game delays because making games is difficult. Making them in a work from home pandemic situation is even more difficult. And so many delays. So I hope it comes out November 11th. Actually, I should say, I just hope it comes out when it's polished and ready, whether that's November 11th or not. But, you know, I'm sure they know what they're doing, and hopefully it's just that the game's basically already done as we're talking now, and they're just polishing the heck out of it until November. But yeah, this is going to be a big deal. I feel like the hype has not sort of crested yet, or not even close.
Oh, really? He's here! No! Get away, you
taking some elements of like NPC routine behavior from, taking inspiration from Oblivion, which is my favorite Elder Scrolls game. So they've been kind of just dropping these little hints and nuggets in these dev diaries, but we still haven't actually seen this game in a continuous gameplay setting. Like, well, you know, what exactly are you doing? I mean, is it more Mass Effect-y, or is it really just closer to Skyrim in space? And, you know, both of those would have their pros and cons, or is it something completely new? But, I mean, like you said, Damon, this is the first game from Todd Howard's Bethesda Game Studios team, so I'm really excited by this. I want to see what that team comes up with, and it's a next-gen Xbox exclusive, and this should it release this year, it's certainly going to be the biggest thing on Xbox in 2010.
Yeah, that's a big question in my mind is just, you know, how big can Starfield get? Skyrim is a huge game. It's in the top 20 best-selling video games of all time. It has huge mass market appeal far beyond the reaches of just IGN's like core gamer demographic. It's a very, very popular, well-known game. Is Starfield even close to that level of success? What do you think, Ryan?
Dude!
Not with the first one. No, certainly not. I didn't know that.
Okay.
But here's the thing.
Okay.
You know, this to me seems like Bethesda showing a lot of respect to Todd
There's no
Howard,
grace
who's been there
around here.
for 25 years now. And the team, and that team's been together for a long time as well. I talked to Todd about that. And they've made a lot of great games together, and I think it's not unlike Fallout in that before Fallout came along, Todd Howard and that team only made Elder Scrolls games, and that's all they did.
How the hell did I get there?
Literally asked when the Fallout rights became available, he told management, I would like this. If you can get this, I want it. And they went and got it for him, and they did that knowing that it would mean that Elder Scrolls was going to go on hold for a little while they started making a Fallout game. And, you know, it's showing respect for a very respected game developer and his team. And if they want to do something new, let's see if you can build something new, knowing that it's not going to get to Fallout or Elder Scrolls right away. But see the long game, and maybe, you know, if it's great, it could get there in another entry or two, and you have 3 cash cows instead of 2. So yeah, it's part respect for your team and your creators, and part playing the long game of gaming as a business.
Jonathan, Starfield being an Xbox exclusive, how are you feeling about it these days? Is it something that you wish you could play on your PlayStation 5?
I mean, I think there are probably a lot of people that do. I've actually never played a Bethesda RPG, so Starfield would probably be the one I jump into first. I have total respect for them at Creature WoW. I think for me, it's I get paralyzed by the amount of choice in those games. So I've tried Skyrim, I've tried Fallout, I've tried Oblivion, and then I kind of just like lose my way after a little bit. I just have that happen sometimes, but you know, I do really like sci-fi stuff, so I do think Starfield is probably one of those people that just a little bit more than those past ones, and I certainly think, you know, there are probably a ton of PlayStation players that are to be able to play it. You know, Game Pass and the way Xbox is going with games on console and PC and in the cloud. Hopefully there will be easy ways and low cost ways for people to be able to
That's bullshit.
That seems to be the trend, but you know, I certainly think it's probably one of the biggest games that you're just not going to be able to get on the PlayStation console this year. And it will be very interesting to see how that plays out. Not that there certainly haven't been PlayStation exclusives this year for Xbox players. It's just how the way these things work now.
Well, not to worry, Jonathan. There is an upcoming sci-fi RPG that is going to be a console exclusive on PS5. Actually, maybe for this one we should say science fantasy. Because this is the Knights of the Old Republic remake. So far, it's a console launch exclusive on PS5, although I would not be surprised if it would eventually come to Xbox sometime down the line. I actually played the original KOTOR on the original Xbox, so it would seem a little strange to not have that eventually land on Xbox someday. But Jonathan, this one was announced last summer, I believe at a PlayStation State of Play. Nothing since then. Surely not coming this year. I think the KOTOR remake will be out 2023.
Yeah, this was a PlayStation Showcase announcement last year. This is from Asper, and they've been doing a lot of re-releases and ports of Star Wars games like Force Unleashed, the Jedi Outcast games, Republic Remake, etc. So this seems like their most recent big, really focused in development projects. I would think we'll probably maybe start to see stuff either at the end of this year or early next year, but I do think it's one that there is such a love for KOTOR, and especially I think a lot of questions about where Star Wars video games fit in everything, that I think this is one that they're going to take as much time as they need to get right. I don't think you can really put up the KOTOR remake and have it be, well, it's okay. I think they really want to push for something that's as memorable for people as the original games. So, maybe the end of next year we could potentially look at, but I also wouldn't be surprised if this was a 2024 game, to be honest.
Ryan, the original KOTOR is one of my favorite games that I played on the original Xbox, probably right up there with the original Half-Life for me. Did you also play KOTOR on Xbox?
I reviewed it for official.
Oh my gosh, there you go.
Because I'm old, but that is, like you did, it's not just one of my favorite original Xbox games. It's probably it's like my 1A or 1B favorite RPG ever, along with Mass Effect 1, which incidentally are both done by the exact same development team, BioWare. I adore this game. I love that it completely embraced the ability to and the story went along with it if you went down that road.
What the?
It was just such a brilliant game. And so, yeah, it is weird as an Xbox player and something that reviewed it as, when it was an Xbox exclusive. It's going to be a timed PlayStation exclusive, but yeah, I'm not going to I'm fortunate to have a PS5 back there, so I will be playing it day one on whatever console. And
get your own, bro.
PS5, but I will be very excited to see what this team does. I mean, with all due respect, this is a team that development team doesn't. Aspyr is not known for making AAA blockbuster games. They're known as a port house. Right. So there's I think some reasonable skepticism there, but I also know that they've hired a lot of original KOTOR developers, ex-BioWare people. So hopefully, I don't really doubt the talent. I just hope that Aspyr is able to, and Sony is helping to utilize the full resources to make this the game, as Jonathan mentioned, the game that it really deserves to be.
It certainly seems like it's something that they're kind of putting their full focus into in that regard. But I agree with you. It is sort of a very much proving themselves moment for this team and seeing where they go from here. But hopefully they can live up to it. Certainly seems like the Lucasfilm partnerships we've been seeing are ones being on a promise of a certain quality level. So hopefully that proves to be the case here.
I need to correct myself real quick. It was Half-Life 2 that I played on the original Xbox. Yes. But Ryan, jumping back to the Xbox side of things, we also have the Outer Worlds 2 coming up, and this was revealed last summer with just a trailer. I don't think we've seen any gameplay or gotten much out of it since then, but do we know that one is an Xbox exclusive?
I believe so. Yeah, I think that will, now that it's under Microsoft's wing, that will be an Xbox exclusive. And that trailer was, even as you said, David, it didn't show any gameplay. It's really early, but what a just fun trailer that was, where it just completely leaned into the meta. Like, this is the part where we show, fancy landscape, and that was a really fun trailer put together for it.
Get out of here, you have nothing. Oh my god.
I'm curious if it's going to kind of remain a like similarly scoped game as the first one, where it's it's not like Witcher sized or even Skyrim sized, I guess would be, or Fallout sized to be kind of use a better parallel there. If it's going to be more of like a 20 to 40 hour game, I would be totally fine. I'm always going to be a quality over quantity person, and not that you can't have both. There are plenty of games that have shown that you can have both, but that part remains to be seen, because the first one was funded. It was Private Division published it. This is the 2K indie label. And this one's got the full backing of Microsoft, now that Microsoft owns Obsidian. And so, does Microsoft say, scope up, take all the time you want. You guys have grounded and you have avowed, so we're not worried about getting stuff from you. Go ahead and make this 100-hour, or if they will kind of keep it a little more, a little shorter, in air quotes there, on RPG standards. That's an interesting question that needs to be answered.
I think a challenge they have at Xbox is to make sure that Starfield and Outer Worlds 2 are differentiated enough, because if Starfield is like the Elder Scrolls and Fallout formula in space, that's kind of what the original Outer Worlds was already.
Fair point.
So they definitely lean more into humor in Outer Worlds. But they're kind of two very, very similar games under the same umbrella.
Hello.
Jonathan, would you include the Outer Worlds in one of those games that just offers you too much choice?
Please.
I wouldn't, no, because it's shorter. I actually played and loved the Outer Worlds, because that was a Fallout or a Skyrim I could see most of in 30 hours. And I tend to play a lot, like a variety of a lot of games, and skip around a lot. So a scope, a size of that, like, speaking to shorter RPGs, Ryan, I know there's some of your favorites, but the South Park RPGs, especially the original, being a short RPG that you could experience in that way, I love those. Not that I don't think it's, it's incredible that we do get these massive RPGs, especially for people who only play a couple games a year and want to really invest in those worlds. But for me, for skipping around, I loved the Outer Worlds and feeling like I could see so much of it. So I wouldn't mind if they kept it to a smaller scale, but also wouldn't blame them if they want to see what they could expand it to. I loved the tone of that world, though. So I think it is only set for PC and Xbox at this point, and I'll definitely be playing it day one.
Okay, there are a couple more upcoming next-gen sci-fi RPGs to mention, and they're both kind of related to each other and to some other games we've been talking about here. First, the next Mass Effect.
Oh my god.
This one I don't know how to feel quite about. I think the original trilogy that was released last year was a good reminder of how great the original games were.
I'm gonna die right now.
Of course, then there was Mass Effect Andromeda and Anthem,
Why are you
and
go?
Bioware just sort of seems to have kind of lost its way. Not quite the powerhouse developer that it was from the days of the original Mass Effect. Another Mass Effect.
There's a couple reasons. One, I do think the points you just made, I think that BioWare has had a major wake-up on every level. And they've posted twice.
Oh my god, help.
To speak of that. And for better or for worse, this is going to be made by mostly the people that worked on the original games.
Help!
So
shit.
That can be the thing, though. If you have new product developers that kind of, I don't want to say grew up in a kind of literal sense, but they played and loved the original Mass Effect games as we did when they came out. They're moving off. They're going to avoid part of Andromeda's problem. A not insignificant part was Frostbite. The spring in the game. And so, the original Mass Effect trilogy, by the way, 3. So, not that that's like a guarantee of success, but we've seen from other developers that are excited the tools and the support you can get for Unreal Engine being two big pluses. So, I am optimistic. There's a long way to go, but yeah, I think the positive reception to Mass Effect Legendary Edition, as you cited, David, that I think has shown, like, that's the North Star for BioWare now, for this new Mass Effect team. It's like, people love this, you remastered it, and it turned out great, and people still love what this was, so let's stay focused and let's keep that in mind as we make this new one. So, I am optimistic, even though I know we're not going to see this game for quite a while.
Sure. Jonathan, do you share Ryan's optimism?
I think so, to the extent, as Ryan mentioned, that I think there's sort of a I think that phrase really rings true for the way that both they're taking an approach to this and to the newest Dragon. It seems like they are giving them they are listening to what the fans want. And this is something that we're starting to see a little bit of a trend in this.
You blew it.
Very up and down when it comes to the fan bases. And we've seen that with EA in general. With the Dead Space remake, where they're working with fans to get their feedback throughout development. They're showing behind the scenes stuff very early. Similarly with Skate, they're doing that as well with the reboot of that. And with these two games, I think they know what the BioWare name has meant. I think a lot of the developers there do as well, and I think they hope to kind of aim for that. I think the only reason to be tepid right now would be mostly because it's probably not going to come out for quite some time. I think that Mass Effect announcement was similar to the Starfield and Elden Ring announcements we got from Bethesda a few years back, was sort of to let people know this is coming, give an idea, get people excited, but it seems like something that is a bit of a letdown. So hopefully they learn a lot through Dragon Age, hopefully they learn a lot through the past few years, but I'm hopeful because they've seen what the missteps can be, and I hope they can learn from them.
And the final game we're looking at today, or talking about today, is the aforementioned Casey Hudson. He has a new studio. They're working on a AAA multi-platform sci-fi RPG. They released some concept art, and the art it definitely gives me some Mass Effect-ish vibes.
Get out of here! Dang!
I don't know, like
you just lost them. It's okay.
Behind original Mass Effect, but also Anthem. Well, I don't know. How are you feeling about a new sci-fi RPG from
He left during Anthem, as I recall, and then came back because he was at Microsoft working on HoloLens for a while. So not to like completely derail this or absolve him of any Anthem blame, but no, the guy's track record speaks for itself, as you just said, David. I mean, I just got done talking about how my two favorite role-playing games ever were both made by this person and the team he's worked with. And so, yeah, I mean, AAA sci-fi RPG from the director of Mass Effect and KOTOR 1. Where do I pre-order? I mean, that's really, that's enough to definitely buy a lot of hype and credibility from me, and I'll be curious who's publishing it and how big the team is, and if there are other former BioWare people on the team with him, and what the release timeline looks like for that. So yeah, I'll be following this one very, very closely, but just right off the bat, very excited on that.
Jonathan, you also ready to just open your wallet just knowing that Casey Hudson's making a new sci-fi RPG?
I mean, certainly the pedigree is there. I'm excited to see what the sort of different take will be. I think that's what's most interesting. We're seeing a lot of these big creator names leave foundational and really, prominent studios to go create their own smaller teams. Some then get absorbed back into the big machine like J. Vince Haven Studios and PlayStation this week. But, I think seeing these really prominent names after all this time still be really excited by ideas that they've worked with for so long means hopefully there's something special there. So I definitely want to see more of it, but it's certainly a great starting point for a brand new IP like that.
Yeah, and sort of jumping off your first comment there, Jonathan, it'll be interesting to see how they can make something that stands apart from these other sci-fi RPGs that are coming. How does a new sci-fi RPG?
I don't know, you didn't really. I guess I'm not trying to affect this guy. I never officially saw him die, so
also coming,
what's the first thing I get from him?
And so on and so on. But definitely I will be watching their work with great interest. Before we go, we have the results of last week's poll. Jeff, maybe I'll discuss. Let's see, what news got? What unannounced exclusive are you looking forward to the most? The winning place was Fallout 5, over 30% of the vote. It's not too surprising. Down at the bottom was a quick reboot. And maybe I need some context here. That seems a little random, Ryan. Is that something that's being talked about? A quick reboot?
It's job listings have hinted at it. It's admittedly the probably flimsiest of those like confirmed, unconfirmed new games that we were talking about last week and put in that poll. Like Fallout 5's going to happen. It's just a matter of it's probably going to be in many years from now, not just after Starfield, but we already know that.
Oh shit!
Pre-production on Elder Scrolls 6 as their next game, so Fallout 5 will be after that. So, what's Quake's, Quake were just kind of, there was some
oh god, watch out!
job listing for the software was worded a lot of people suspecting that maybe they're going to do the Doom treatment on Quake, so I hope so, because that would be, if they did a single-player reboot of Quake, that would be very much all over that.
Same, I'll also be all over the second winning result, which was Ghost of Tsushima 2. Yes, please, gimme, gimme, gimme. Here's a poll for you to vote on for next episode. We want to know which of the next-gen sci-fi games we discussed today are you looking forward to most. Starfield, the next Mass Effect, the KOTOR remake. Make sure to vote at IGN.com, and we'll share the results with you next episode. And that's going to do it for this edition of Next Gen Console Watch. Thank you to Brian, Jonathan, thank you to Alan working behind the scenes to make this episode possible. We'll be back next Friday at 6 a.m. Pacific 9 a.m.
Oh, crap.
For Next Gen PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X news. See you then.
Smartphones were more than just smart.
Okay.
The all-new Google Pixel 6. Power adapter precisely where you need it. Google Pixel 6.
Number 5. Jackpot's 2022 by Entropy Tamed. Entropy Tamed once again focuses with a polished new game, smooth controls, and fun gameplay. Jackpot is quite a simple game, which reminds me a lot to the N64 classic Rocket. With our we are more
No! Help, guys! The fuck?
This is not an easy task. We need to think about how to mechanics together different locations in the environment. This can either be very satisfying or frustrating. Give it a try for yourself. Number 4. Revolted by Pulsate. Race an RC car around various rooms of a house while collecting pickups and beating high scores. Revolted is quite obviously inspired by the all-time classic Revolt, which might just be the best RC car racing game of all time, and it is really nicely executed. Despite the kind of hard controls, it's a lot of fun to race through the well-designed tracks. This is an underrated one. Definitely give it a try.
Oh. Okay. Jesus, pizza. Alright. Oh. It's so wet right now.
Number 3. Last Days of Light by Elevate to 11. Last Days of Light is an atmospheric journey where we watch and control a girl on her way through what looks to be a post-apocalyptical sci-fi world. This adventure is very cinematic and atmospheric, full of beautiful scenery and sculptings. It's all accompanied by awesome ambient sounds and music. You can see that a lot of effort was put into this, and I can recommend to experience this for yourself.
Excuse me. Okay. Oh, let's try this again. Not really getting upgraded by doing this. I'm kind of fucking up, right?
For the real ones, the real ones finally here. Introducing the Warrior Frozen Treats.
Number 2. Shushu by Spoon. Shushu is incredibly adorable, colorful, and creative. In this adventure platformer, we control a little girl and make our way through the beautifully stylized world. The levels are very well designed, and while the gameplay was kept sort of simple, it's super creative in its execution. Apart from the platforming, we have mini-games like shooting puzzles, collectibles, and things which force you to get further in the level. Some people may think about the game, and I totally agree. This game is
Hey. I hate that. I hate that. Feels slow.
Number 1. Trip's Voyage by Eupholis. Trip gets a little tired of lounging on his own island and decides to venture out for gold in this grand platforming adventure. The creator is a big fan of Mario games, and he put all of his love and inspiration into this adventure, which he did an incredible job with. It feels super polished in its controls, has a great variety of movement and gameplay elements, and is beautiful to look at. With almost an hour of playtime and more levels to be added, Trip's Voyage is probably one of the most polished and fun games that you can find in games right now. Definitely check it out.
Okay. What a good game. Good. Guys, guys. Uh-oh. What? He got him. He got him. Sorry, guys. Please tell me up here. Shield. You're gonna get burned.
In this week's episode, we
What the hell is
have to share with you guys here. The first one is from Untitled
Oh god!
Bailey Lamb.
Oh my god, oh my god. Really? I have no more health.
Which I'm always
I have nothing.
It looks like a wonderful, moving concept art of an atmospheric city. Really well done.
Oh shit, I gotta get out of here. I'm gonna die.
It's at 73, called Open All Night, which is another story location from his upcoming tech noir adventure, Solid State. In general, SZ always makes incredible art. I love the neon style cyberpunk themes. And that's it for today's video.
You guys gonna shoot
If you enjoyed it, definitely make sure to give it a like, some feedback, and share it with others, also sharing dreams with the world. Many thanks also to my patrons for supporting me as an artist. If you want to do the same, check out the link in the description down below. And with that, thank you guys so much for watching. That's it for today's video.
For a limited time, save up to $400 when you join our Alliance in Google Fun. Sign up today.
Hi everyone, it's Dr. Wonder. Welcome back to the YouTube channel on YouTube. My hope for this channel is to navigate relationships, possibly voice after the first grade, and give you tips for navigating
One minute. Bitch.
But how many of you will have ever signed something?
Fucker. Oh no, no, no!
The risk that
Watch out! No, 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 no! Time!
themselves as not being very smart. And that was reinforced by the narcissistic parents who gesture towards them. This person grows up in adulthood, they still feel good about themselves. They still have lots of self-doubt. They're still trying to sort of somehow please that parent and prove themselves. This person has struggled a bit professionally because they just don't trust themselves. And they don't feel worthy, despite actually being quite smart. Risks are difficult for this person to take, and they feel lucky when anyone offers them a job, even a job that is definitely below their skill set. This person gets an opportunity to take on a new venture on their own, something they had wanted to do for a long time, but didn't have faith to pursue. Tried to pursue it, but they got lots of no's from decision makers in the industry, which is to be expected. But that, in a way, substantiates what they've always heard from their parents. If you told yourself, you aren't all that, you know what you're doing. Your feet on the ground, you have to They finally find someone that is willing to collaborate with them on their new project and provide funding for it, which is essential. Now, the person confirmed that they're entering into this deal with doesn't have the best reputation.
Oh, okay.
No one else stepped up. They didn't feel comfortable asking more and more people to collaborate. It's more comfortable they feel lucky that this person is even willing to consider doing it.
Oh my god, how was I supposed to dodge that? Okay.
Once they get behind the project they're doing,
Okay. Ah, I'm gonna die right here. Wait, I didn't get the things. Or did I? I don't even know. Right. Fucking speed though now. I died, but it's okay.
When the person looked back, they really felt stupid. This person, who was narcissistically abused for so long, was never really in possession of their value, actually made a real horse race of this new business. And then, through their ongoing work hard practice, even working around the clock, other better companies did come along and did become interested in collaboration. That is just the contract is going to be a problem. When the person looked back at that one-sided contract, they didn't even believe that they were worthy of the actual. They didn't even think to ask for modifications of the contract. Because they knew they were worthy. And they didn't know that. They motivated themselves and didn't feel confident to even find the routine. It's so easy to roll our eyes.
Wow, you weirdo. Here it comes. Okay. Whoa, 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 whoa! I didn't pick up my runes.
May see their parents advocate for themselves.
I'm just gonna leave a little bit.
Have the experience of being taught how to advocate for themselves or to have someone advocate for them, which is what is supposed to happen when we are children. A child doesn't have to learn to be modeled by the parents, to teach the child their values so they can make good calls when they're an adult. Entering into crappy contracts and deals is a vulnerability of narcissistic abuse survivors. Not all. Some survivors are actually savvy and tough. But if a person does not value themselves and has a track record of being invalidated and gaslighted. It can be hard to make a good deal for yourself. This can play out as bad divorce settlements, bad business contracts, bad salary negotiations, bad trusts and estates and wills, bad lease arrangements, bad contracts with contractors who are doing work on a home. Any place where a person has to enter into an agreement that may require putting their needs first and be willing to fight for it is often a fraught space for survivors of narcissistic abuse. Many survivors often struggle with conflict. Conflict avoidance is a common trauma-bonded pattern. And quite often, getting the terms of a contract or an agreement negotiated does require some level of disagreement and perhaps even conflict. So it can be easier, as it often is in narcissistic relationships, to give in, partly to avoid conflict, and partly because of the long indoctrination to believe that you do not have the right to ask for better or for more, or you feel that you don't deserve better, or that you're not enough for you to ask. This pattern has often made things go from bad to worse for many survivors. After enduring years or even lifetimes of narcissistic abuse, they may then have to face the challenges and consequences of
you
a bad
appear to be doing
contract
well.
or agreement for
Very
many
good.
years, and
Well,
will often blame themselves
would you like to learn an
for
incantation?
relying on such
I don't even know how.
and the long history of invalidation means that lots of folks don't feel that they have the right or the resources to seek out legal counsel and can
May the Golden Order shine through you.
conflict.
You've met Geraint, I
What if
take it.
smartphones were more than
Then
just
owing
smart?
to our
The all-new
duties
Google
shared,
Pixel 6
we are now
makes distractions
comrades in
instantly
arms.
disappear.
I
With the
think
most
you found
advanced
this.
smartphone camera
What?
yet,
The power
the
of the
Google Pixel
Golden
6
Order to aid the hunt of those who live in death.
Anyone who has been a survivor of narcissistic abuse and isn't good at either reading the conflict and or avoid conflict, especially if the potential conflict is with someone who leans into dominance. It is crucial that you get someone you trust, or ideally someone who
I serve the Golden Order, that I might put this crooked land to rights, following only the guidance of the great Elden Ring. Those who...
As though you don't have the right to ask for more, fair, or more equitable. Attorneys have jobs for a reason. They happen to be people who've been trained in a way who do not respond badly to conflict and appear to be built to endure it and tolerate it. Interestingly, and a flip side of this is the need to use contracts.
What do you
because of
need?
all of the
I have
narcissistic
little time to spare.
Too many survivors of narcissistic abuse want to trust. Then they may collaborate with someone they don't get a contract and it never
Are you
ends well.
aggrieved
With the
at the notion you are but a visitant here? Then you would do well to remember the first words of grace given to you. Stand before the Elden Ring and become the Elden Lord. If those words held any meaning to you, follow the guidance of grace. Lay low the shard bearers and claim for yourself a great rune. Do so, and the doors to the round tables in the chamber will open, and you will receive the wisdom of the two fingers.
And do damage to your career, your finances, your family, and your life.
Once the wisdom of the two fingers becomes your own, I'll impart to you a proper welcome. As a true member of the round table, I have high hopes for you. I'm sick and tired of them. These namby-pamby tarnished think us no more than a shelter from the rain. We've spoken long enough. I have matters to attend to.
That same kind of flooding can take place, and the person can feel really overwhelmed and not make sometimes just even giving yourself a minute. This is why, for example, salespeople are really vulnerable to very aggressive salespeople. because many times they're just wanting a response. They may want to please the dominating salesperson. Again, the best thing you can do is step away, no matter how much they try to sweeten the deal. Uber sales approach. Ask for a minute, or go with someone you trust who can help you sort of modulate and moderate at those times, so you can make as good a decision as possible. It is a very common survivor pattern. The key is that you don't take it out on yourself. It's almost been a built-in sort of blind spot when you get narcissistic abuse. So it really comes about being mindfully aware that this is a possibility, getting the support you need to protect yourself as you go through this process.
YouTube is amazing, but it can be a little overwhelming. Except for he makes sense to me for brands.
Gran Turismo 7. You done effed it up, Sony and PlayStation. That's all I can say. This is a game that is a very, very competent driving simulator and had all the potential to make waves across the driving game community, but instead the game is making headlines because of its nefarious microtransactions additions that has seen the user score plummet to a measly 2.4, and you can see here a major discrepancy between the user score and the Metascore. That's because reviewers got a version of the game that isn't representative of what it is now after updates reduced the amount of progression as well as introduced microtransactions that are far more egregious than anything we have ever seen in past Gran Turismo games. And you can see right here what the reviews are saying, scrolling down. Game requires always online for single player. Oh yeah, I'll get to that in a bit. And servers are constantly down for maintenance. And you can see right here, 125 out of 128 people found this to be a helpful user review. So the high ratio of people approving of these reviews really highlights that this is a widespread criticism. Sad that Polyphony Digital has gone the way of Rockstar and EA. They force online-only connection, even for single player, in order to keep tabs on their most prized aspect of the game, credits and microtransactions. The game has seen an update to drastically reduce race payouts, and the promise of being able to sell your extra cars has been cut from the game. Oh yeah, that is 100% true. I'll address that too. All actions to entice the player to spend real-world money on in-game currency. Polyphony used to be my favorite developer, but it's clear that top-down orders from Sony have changed their priorities from consumer enjoyment to shareholders' bottom line. I couldn't have put it better myself, and many of these other reviews essentially echo similar sentiments. Now let's dive deeper into the story and the order of events where Gran Turismo went from glorified new racing game to one of the worst examples of a AAA game that completely ruined its potential. Here's an article from back in March 4th, 2022 from Video Games Chronicle, whose headline reads, Gran Turismo 7's microtransactions are live and GT Sports $5 cars now cost $40. Yup. From previous games which did include microtransactions, you will see price hikes that can go up to 8 times what the price once used to be, and then that on top of the diminished earnings of progression and rewards throughout GT7, and you've got a situation where it takes more grind and more money than ever to fulfill your car fantasies in a game that's all about fulfilling your car fantasies. And here's an important bit. During the review period, these microtransactions were inaccessible, so it was not possible to tell how much credits would cost when the game was released. Now that it's out, however, the full prices for these microtransactions have been revealed. It's the same old technique of having different packages of microtransactions at different price points. 100,000 credits will cost you $2.50. 250,000 credits will cost you $5. 750,000 credits, $10, and 2 million credits, $20. So in the best case scenario, 100,000 credits equals $1. That's sort of the relative equivalence. Video Games Chronicles article continues. Gran Turismo Sport let players buy individual cars as microtransactions with the vast majority of cars costing between $1 and $5 each. So there were microtransactions back then, but it was nowhere near as egregious as it is now. This is no longer the case in Gran Turismo 7. Now Porsche 919 Hybrid 16, which can be bought for $3 in Gran Turismo Sport, can only be bought for 3 million credits, which would require the player to spend at least $40 going by the package pricing here. And the most cost-effective way would be to buy 2 of this package, so you'd have to spend at least $40 for this one car. And there are plenty of other comparisons here. The Aston Martin Vulcan 16 cost $5 in GT Sport. It costs roughly $40 in GT7. The McLaren P1 GTR 16, $5 in GT Sport, roughly $40 in GT7. And the Audi R18 TDI 11, $3 in GT Sport, now roughly $40 in GT7. Utterly disgusting and ridiculous. And notice how they stagger the pricing of the microtransactions packages in relation to the cost of buying certain things. So for example, right here, if you want to buy a vehicle that's 1 million credits, there is no option to buy 1 million credits, so you do have to spend $20 here, or you have to spend $10 here and then $5 here for a grand total of $15, instead of just being able to spend a quantity that saves you some money while netting you exactly 1 million credits. You have to spend at least $15 instead of being able to spend $10 for the exact amount of credits you need. Video Games Chronicle highlights this too. You'll have to buy 750,000 and 250,000 credits for a total of $15, or 2 million credits for $20. And then, as if all that wasn't enough, there is the aspect of the game where you can upgrade your cars, and yes, you can buy those with premium currency as well. Every car also has a host of upgrade parts, all of which cost credits too. And car upgrades monetization is also at its most egregious in GT7. And then the cherry on top is that there are cars that can be incredibly expensive. Some legendary cars will be costing up to 20 million credits. That's roughly $200 for a single car. And here's the rub. It's bad enough that GT7 increases the cost, the real world money cost of cars by the amount that it does. And it's bad enough that upgrading cars is also more costly than ever. But on top of all of that, they also made it so that it's harder to earn cars in GT7 through gameplay by increasing the amount of grind required, as reported here by Video Games Chronicle on March 17, 2022, via an article whose headline reads, "Following microtransactions criticism, Gran Turismo 7's latest patch makes it harder to earn cars," and you'll find the details scrolling down below. Some of the more high-end cars in GT7 are so expensive that they require a significant amount of gameplay to obtain enough credits to buy them via normal means, with some cars potentially taking dozens of hours of racing. And that's for a single car, mind you. Other cars, most notably high-value legendary cars, also rotate in and out of the various shops in the game, a tactic that can be perceived as the FOMO effect, essentially get the car now before it's gone forever or gone for a very long time, and you miss out on this one-time or once-in-a-blue-moon deal. And then on top of that, a convenient feature from previous entries is strangely missing in this one. Unlike in previous games in the series, players are unable to sell their cars to earn credits. I wonder why that is. Simply playing the game's races over and over is the only in-game option to earn these cars. This is just cynical levels of trying to lure players into the game's microtransaction store by playing with their emotions, by playing on their impatience, and by intentionally making it an insufferable experience to get these cars through gameplay. The article then concludes by spotlighting just how much credits earnings were nerfed in parallel to the introduction of the game's ridiculously greedy microtransactions. You can see right here just how many of the credits earnings were adjusted by, a third or half, even more at times. Here's one race that used to give out 50,000 credits and now only gives out 30,000. Here's one that used to give out 65,000, nerfed to 30,000. 65,000 to 40,000, 65 to 40, 65 to 35, 65 to 45, 75 to 50, 75 to 50, etc. I mean, you can see it for yourself. I'm not going to sit here and list out all of these, but yeah. Namely, GTPlanet.net in this post highlights just how many hours of gameplay it takes to earn some of the most expensive cars in the game. Here is the time taken to buy just one example of the most expensive vehicles in each game. And you can see right here, Gran Turismo 7 is only second to Gran Turismo 5 in terms of how long it takes to earn some of the most expensive vehicles. But keep in mind one thing, this is during a time when GT5 isn't as prime. This doesn't reflect the fact that GT5 and GT6 have daily login bonus boosts and quicker ways of earning credits through seasonal events during their active life. So during GT5's active life, it would have been at a higher place than it is now. So GT7 technically comes in last. This is the result, 10.9 hours as of version 1.06. After the patch was applied, that number jumped significantly to almost twice that, 17.8 hours. That is the difference between roughly 205 races versus 333 races. And this is despite the fact that GT7 isn't the worst of the Gran Turismos when it comes to the amount of credits you can earn per hour. And it is once again emphasized here that GT5 in its prime, the number of credits earned per hour would be significantly higher. So maybe we can see Gran Turismo 7 at 4th place in terms of credits earned rate. Even though it's not last in credits earned rate, it is still last in the amount of gameplay hours it takes to earn some of the most expensive cars, which further highlights just how much more grind they're demanding from players who want to earn vehicles through gameplay, and how much more money they're demanding from players who just want to buy them outright. Now, as if the microtransaction situation wasn't bad enough, some 7 went offline for over 24 hours. What started out as server maintenance turned into an extended period where people could not access the game, and that is because the game has DRM such that even for single-player modes, you're not able to access those unless you're logged in online, which means that when the game undergoes maintenance, it's not just that you can't play with other players through online multiplayer, it's that you cannot play most of the game at all, which is just obviously very stupid when the single-player mode has no effect on other players in the multiplayer environment. As highlighted by Kotaku here, PlayStation's big new exclusive has been nearly unplayable for over 24 hours. It is back now, but I'll get to that in a bit. Because so much of the game requires an online connection, including a great deal of single-player content, fans have effectively been locked out of Sony's latest console exclusive. On top of the fact that single-player DRM and single-player online requirements are just straight up unacceptable, the fact that the maintenance that turned into an outage went on for so much longer than expected didn't help matters. GT7 is back online after a 30-hour outage. Scrolling down to find the details, a broken update resulted in longer than expected server maintenance yesterday, leaving players frustrated at the limited offline modes available in GT7. Much of GT7, including its career mode and multiplayer, was unplayable for 30 hours, and developers will be able to 24 hours to provide an update after the maintenance extension. Swiftly did apologize for the problems. The game is back online with a functional 1.08 update. Here's the apology in question on the official Gran Turismo website, published on March 18th, 2022. And on top of apologizing for the broken update that led to a much longer and extended period of maintenance where players could not access the vast majority of the game, they also did address the feedback surrounding the microtransactions, not in a satisfactory way. They did have some words to share about that, so let's check out this apology. Immediately before the release of the 1.07 update, we discovered an issue where the game would not start properly in some cases on product versions for the PS4 and PS5. This was the reason for the delay in releasing the correctional 1.08 update. Keep in mind that not once is the issue of requiring an online internet connection to to even access single-player modes is ever addressed here. And then also an update on some event rewards have been adjusted. I wanted to explain the reasons for it and our plans going forward, referring to the diminished rewards in GT7 and the increase in vehicle prices. That's just
okay. Get out of here.
Here's the dumb explanation provided. In GT7, I'd like to have users enjoy lots of cars and races, even without microtransactions. Well, you've made that significantly more difficult, so thanks for that. At the same time, the pricing of cars is an important element that conveys their value and rarity, so I do think it's important for it to be linked with the real-world prices. Nobody plays video games so that real-world elements that are not particularly favorable can seep in. We play video games to fulfill fantasies that we can't in the real world, like owning cars or being able to drive cars that we real world, because most of us cannot afford those cars in the real world. So for you to say that we want GT7 to reflect the real world value of cars in terms of how successful they are, that defeats the whole purpose of a video game racing fantasy simulator. You cannot say in one breath, I want GT7 to feel like the real world where cars are so expensive and out of reach, and then say right after, I'd like to have users enjoy lots of cars and races even without microtransactions, when you've made that so much harder and for many people's schedules and lives just utterly untenable and impossible. The statement then says, I want to make GT7 a game in which you can enjoy a variety of cars lots of different ways, and if possible would like to try to avoid a situation where a player must mechanically keep replaying certain events over and over and over again. Is that why you remove the ability for people to sell cars to earn credits, or why you increase the price of cars or diminished the rate at which players can earn credits? None of what's in the game actually reflects what you say your intentions are. The statement does vaguely say that they are going to update players soon on feature adjustments. We will in time let you know the update plans for additional content, additional race events, and additional features that will constructively resolve this. It pains me that I can't explain the details regarding this at this moment, but we plan on continuing to revise GT7 so that as many players as possible can enjoy the game. We would really appreciate it if everyone could watch over the growth of GT7 from a somewhat longer-term point of view. We really appreciate it if you in the short term would stop trying to screw players over and really nickel and dime them. How about that? If you do that first, we'd be more minded about the long-term future of GT7. But when instead you give out this vague statement that tells us nothing about how you plan to make this up to plenty of pissed players, what we're getting here seems like a vague statement that tries to make it so people ultimately will forget about these issues. This feels like your typical buy some time PR statement that aims to draw this issue out so they can continue to exploit the awful business scheme they have implemented in what should have been the pinnacle of Gran Turismo, but has instead turned into a whole frickin' circus show because of the clownish way in which the monetization of this game is being handled. Here's another article from news outlet Jalopnik, and I want to spotlight this article because it has a great quote scrolling down here. Aside from explaining everything wrong with the economy of GT7 right now, how exploitative it is, it points out, Yamauchi says that he believes it's important for cars to be linked with their real world values, but we play games to exist in a world where we can drive these cars, or we can afford to, at least in a digital realm, drive these cars, simulate them enough so we can at least live out the fantasy of something that the majority